The first light of dawn spilled through the stained glass windows, painting the chapel walls in soft hues of rose and gold. In her chamber just beyond the aisle, Lady Arabella Draycott stood before a full-length mirror, wrapped in the shimmer of ivory silk that caught every breath of sunlight. Her veil trembled as her fingers brushed the lace, her reflection haloed by morning warmth. For a fleeting moment she believed it, that love could make her free. Her maid Elsie fussed behind her, adjusting the fall of the gown. "My lady, you look like a dream. His Grace won't know where to look." Arabella smiled, soft and sincere. "He'll look at me, Elsie. For once he'll truly see me." Outside, faint murmurs slipped through the heavy oak doors. Servants whispering, footsteps pacing. The sound of expectation hung in the air like incense. Her father's voice cut through it all, deep and cold. "Arabella," he called, stepping in without knocking. "You remember what is at stake. Smile for the Draycott name. Do not falter." She turned toward him, her hands tightening around her bouquet. "Yes, father." He lingered for a moment, his eyes softening but only slightly. "Good girl," he said, and left her with silence and the scent of roses. Arabella looked down at her bouquet, 12 perfect white roses tied in silver ribbon, but one had begun to wilt, its petals drooping under invisible weight. Her breath caught. A strange unease curled in her chest, but she pressed it down. After today, she told herself, everything would be different. She whispered to her reflection, her voice trembling but brave. "After today, I'll never have to pretend again." The chapel bells began to toll. The doors opened to a swell of music and murmured admiration. The scent of roses and candle wax filled the air. Arabella stepped into the aisle, every eye turning toward her. The Duke's bride, radiant and trembling, walking toward her future. Her father's arm was firm beneath hers, almost possessive. "Hold your head high," he muttered. At the altar, Sebastian, Duke of Ravensworth, stood tall in his ceremonial coat, dark velvet, silver embroidery glinting under candlelight. His expression was unreadable, his blue eyes distant, shadowed by something she couldn't name. Her heart swelled at the sight of him, the boy who once wrote her poetry under the willow tree, now the man she would call husband. Step by step she drew closer, the chapel echoing with promise. Then came the silence. The officiant's voice rose, calm and reverent. "If any man knows just cause why these two should not be joined?" A rustle, a hesitation. Sebastian's hand moved, but not toward her. He turned, slowly, deliberately, and extended his hand to Lydia, her younger sister, standing among the bridesmaids, pale as the lilies in her crown. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. The priest froze mid-sentence. Arabella blinked, confusion dawning like a wound. "Sebastian," she whispered, his voice cracked, low and shaking. "Forgive me. It was never meant to be you." The sound shattered her world. The murmurs swelled into thunder, nobles whispering, fans fluttering, the cruel joy of scandal alive in every corner. Her father's face went white with fury. Arabella's bouquet slipped from her grasp. White petals scattered across the marble, bleeding innocence into dust. She stared at them, unblinking, her breath gone. And as Sebastian led Lydia to the altar, Arabella's knees weakened, her body trembling under the weight of disbelief. Somewhere, far above, the bells began to toll again, joyous, relentless, cruel. The chapel emptied in whispers. Her father's command came through clenched teeth. "No tears. Not here." Servants guided her toward the side door, shielding her from prying eyes. The cold morning air hit her like a slap, sharp with the scent of dew and betrayal. Behind her, the vows began. Lydia's voice, trembling but obedient. Sebastian's, low and resigned. Arabella stumbled onto the gravel courtyard, her skirts heavy with mud, her veil torn where it had caught the door. In her mind, memories fractured like glass, Sebastian laughing beneath the willow tree, letters sealed in wax, promises whispered under moonlight. All lies now, all ashes. She fell to her knees, the world blurred through her tears, her hands pressed into the earth as if she could steady the spinning of her heart. Love was meant to save me, she whispered. Instead, it made me invisible. The chapel bells rang again, triumphant, merciless. And there, beneath their echo, the woman once destined to be a duchess became something else entirely. Something the Duke would one day learn to fear. If you were Arabella in that chapel, betrayed before everyone you loved, would you stay silent, or would you rise to reclaim your name? The first sound she heard was laughter, not kind, not joyous, but sharp and splintered, like glass breaking against marble. Arabella froze halfway down the corridor of Evermere Hall, the echo clawing at her chest. It was her father's laughter, deep and false, a sound that once meant safety, but now made her stomach twist. She had been summoned to his study before dawn, summoned like a servant, not a daughter. The morning after the scandal, the morning after her name had become the ton's favorite sin. The mirror in the corridor reflected a ghost, pale skin, eyes rimmed red, her wedding gown now dull with dried tears and wilted roses. Her hands still shook when she touched the door handle. She pushed it open, and the scent of cigar smoke and old betrayal hit her at once. "Arabella," Lord Draycott said without turning, "close the door." She obeyed, because she always had. When he finally faced her, his expression was smooth, polished, terrifyingly calm. "You've ruined us," he said softly. "Do you even comprehend what you've done?" She blinked. "What I've done?" Her voice trembled. He took Lydia's hand. He had to. Her father's voice cracked like a whip. For the family's survival, the Duke's inheritance, the alliance, everything was at stake. You were never meant to be the Duchess Arabella. You were meant to secure the match. The rest was to be corrected quietly. Her throat closed. Corrected? Draycott sighed, rubbing his temple. Your manner, your softness. You were a means to an end. Lydia had the spine to endure the ton. You did not. Her heart fractured with each word, but his final one drove the blade in deep. You were never the choice. Something inside her broke. The room blurred. She stumbled backward, choking on the taste of betrayal, not just from the Duke, but from the blood that ran in her veins. Without thinking, she fled. Down the hall, past portraits of ancestors who'd never known disgrace, past servants who turned away in silence, out into the cold morning air where the fog hung heavy over the gardens. The world no longer made sound, only the pulse in her ears, hammering like a funeral march. She didn't know how long she wandered before she collapsed beneath the old elm by the pond, her gown spreading like a ghost's shroud around her. The silence finally broke, not into sobs, those had been taken from her, but into a low, ragged whisper. I was enough. I was enough. But the words carried no conviction. Weeks passed. Her exile was swift and silent. The Draycott name could not endure the scandal, so her father sent her away. For her recovery, the polite note said. In truth, it was banishment. The countryside estate at Renmere was to be her prison. Arabella arrived there one gray afternoon, her only companion a maid too afraid to meet her eyes. The carriage rolled away, leaving her in front of the ivy-covered manor that smelled of dust and neglect. Inside, the silence was suffocating. No laughter, no music, no life. At night, she dreamed of the chapel, of Sebastian's eyes when he said, "Forgive me," of Lydia's hand slipping into his, of roses turning black in her grip. But the days bled into each other, and gradually, pain hardened into something sharper, something cold and quiet and waiting. It was during one of those long, bleak afternoons that she found the letters, hidden in an old chest at the foot of her bed. Dozens of them, folded, sealed, never delivered. all written in Sebastian's hand. Her fingers shook as she opened the first one. My dearest Arabella, there are forces you cannot see. I would give my name, my title, my soul to undo what is to come, but it is already in motion. Forgive me when the moment comes. Know that it is not a rejection of you, but the only way to save you from destruction. Forever yours, S. She read it 3 times. Then she tore it in half. Lies, she whispered. More lies. Yet she couldn't stop herself from opening another. Each letter was the same. Remorse, warning, love buried beneath guilt. By the time she reached the last one, her tears had dried into anger. If you truly loved me, you would have fought, she said to the empty room. You would have chosen me. She pressed her palm to her stomach. The ache there had grown sharper lately, a quiet, secret ache. She knew what it meant. Her hand trembled. You'll never know your father, she whispered. And maybe that's for the best. Winter crept in. Snow fell on Renmir's cracked windows and barren gardens. The world seemed frozen in time, until one night, a letter arrived. Delivered by carriage, sealed in black wax. Her maid brought it trembling. From Evermere Hall, my lady. It bears the Duke's crest. Arabella's heart stumbled. She broke the seal. Lady Draycott, Duchess of Ashbourne, is dead. She fell from the west balcony of Evermere Hall. Some say it was grief. Others say something else. You are requested to remain silent on all matters regarding the family. L. Draycott. The words blurred. Her sister, her rival, dead. Arabella sat motionless for a long time, her hands cold and still over the paper. Then she rose, the old pain in her chest flickering into something darker. I will not be silent, she whispered. The following week, a knock came at Renmir's heavy oak door. The maid opened it hesitantly, and the world tilted again. Sebastian stood there. He looked nothing like the man she'd last seen. Hollow cheeks, shadows beneath his eyes, the posture of someone haunted. His greatcoat was wet from the rain, his gloves stained with mud. Arabella, he said softly, his voice cracking like a prayer. Please, don't close the door. She wanted to. She wanted to slam it and lock him out forever. Instead, she stood frozen. What right do you have to come here? She asked, her tone ablade. He took a step forward. I came to tell you the truth. She laughed, bitter, brittle. Truth? You married my sister at the altar, Sebastian. Whatever truth you think I'll hear, it's already poisoned. He flinched. I never meant for her to die. The words landed heavy. You think I believe you? I think, he said quietly, that you still deserve to know why. She turned her back to him, crossing the parlor. Then speak, but do not expect my forgiveness. Sebastian removed his gloves, his hands trembling. Lydia's death, it wasn't an accident. She left me a letter. She feared your father. Arabella spun around. My father? He nodded. He arranged everything, the marriage, the manipulation, even her confinement at Evermere. She was going to expose him, and now she's dead. The room seemed to sway. You expect me to believe that? Sebastian stepped closer. I expect you to believe the man you once knew, before all this. The man who loved you more than his own name. Her throat burned. That man died the moment you said forgive me. He flinched again as though struck. Then let me prove he didn't. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Only the crackle of the fire, the faint hiss of the storm outside. She looked at him, truly looked. Beneath the guilt, there was pain, real pain, and beneath that, the same fierce longing she had buried for months. She hated that she still felt it. Why come to me? She asked at last. After everything? Because Lydia's letter mentions you, he said. She said you were the only one who could help uncover the truth. She trusted you, even when she hated you. Arabella stared into the fire. Her father's laughter echoed in her mind. "You're asking me to dig through the ashes of my own ruin," she murmured. Sebastian took a slow breath. "I'm asking you to help me give your sister peace, and maybe," his voice softened, "give us both a chance to breathe again." The flames threw their light across his face, weary, desperate, sincere. For the first time since the chapel, she let herself look into his eyes, and what she saw there terrified her, because it wasn't deceit. It was devotion, long buried, still burning. She turned away. "I will do it, not for you, for her." He bowed his head. "Then I owe you everything." Arabella's voice broke as she whispered, "You already owed me your heart." The silence that followed felt alive, trembling, dangerous, inevitable. When he finally left that night, the rain had stopped. But Arabella didn't sleep. She stood by the window until dawn, watching the horizon bleed pale gold over the frostbitten fields, her reflection faint in the glass. Not the girl who once believed in vows, but a woman reborn in ashes. She pressed a hand to her chest, where the ache still lived, and whispered to the wind, "This time, I will not break quietly." The first thing Arabella saw was blood on the marble. Just a smear, faint, darkened by time, but unmistakable. It marked the place where Lydia had fallen. The Duke's hand hovered near hers, as if to guide her, but she stepped away. "Don't," she said sharply. "If I'm to walk through this house again, I'll do it on my own feet." Evermere Hall rose around them like a mausoleum, vast, hollow, echoing with memories too loud to silence. The air reeked of polish and old sorrow. Portraits of the Ashbourne line stared down from gilded frames, their painted eyes heavy with judgment. Sebastian watched her quietly. "I wasn't certain you'd come." "You asked for help," Arabella said, her voice steady despite the quake beneath it. "I came for truth, not forgiveness." He nodded once. "Then we start where it ended." They climbed the grand staircase, each step echoing in the silence. The west balcony waited, veiled in gray light, its iron railing twisted slightly where Lydia's body had struck. Beneath it, the roses grew wild, tangled with black ivy. Arabella's breath hitched. She used to love this spot, said the wind felt freer here. Sebastian's voice was hoarse. "She used to stand there at night. I never thought—" He stopped. "You never thought she'd fall?" Arabella turned to him, her eyes sharp. "Or that she'd be pushed?" His silence was answer enough. Later, in the drawing room, the servants lingered with fearful glances. Every whisper seemed to trail Arabella's steps. "She shouldn't have come back," one murmured. "The Duke's cursed," said another. "Two brides and not one wedding to bless." Arabella met their stares until they looked away. The ton might have broken her name, but it had not broken her spine. When she and Sebastian were alone, she opened her journal and laid it on the table. "I'll document everything, names, accounts, inconsistencies." "You think like an investigator," he said, faint admiration flickering in his tone. "I think like someone who's been lied to too often." A log cracked in the fire. Shadows danced against the walls. "Tell me about Lydia's final days," she said. He hesitated, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "She was restless. Kept saying someone was watching her. She dismissed half the staff without reason, locked herself in her chambers, and then she fell." Sebastian nodded. "The coroner called it despair. I called it impossible." Arabella's gaze softened despite herself. "Did you love her?" He looked away. "She was your sister. I cared for her. But love?" He exhaled. "No, not the way I loved you." The confession hung in the air, too heavy, too late. Arabella swallowed hard. "Then help me prove she didn't die in vain." The next morning, fog blanketed Evermere. Arabella wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and descended to the servants' quarters. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hanley, looked startled to see her. "My lady." "I'm not your lady," Arabella interrupted gently. "But you knew my sister. Tell me what happened the night she died." Mrs. Hanley hesitated, her hands twisted in her apron. "The Duchess was frightened, miss. Said someone had been in her room. She dismissed the night maid after an argument. I found the poor girl crying in the corridor." "What was her name?" "Clara, miss. She left the next morning. No one's seen her since." "Where did she go?" "I couldn't say, but she dropped this." The housekeeper reached into her pocket and handed Arabella a small brooch, a simple silver rose, one petal bent, blood-stained. Arabella's breath caught. "Lydia wore this the day she died." Mrs. Hanley nodded grimly. "So I thought." By the time Sebastian found her in the library, Arabella had spread papers across the long oak table, letters, servant rosters, financial ledgers. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking for a pattern." He stepped closer. "You've been up all night." "So have you," she countered. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, time fractured. The air thickened with unspoken memory, the scent of roses, the sound of church bells, the echo of a promise broken at an altar. Sebastian looked away first. "You were always the clever one. You were supposed to be the brave one." He gave a hollow laugh. "We both failed." Arabella turned another page, a list of household accounts signed by her father's solicitor. At the bottom, a notation caught her eye. "Payment rendered. C. Darnell. Services concluded." She frowned. "Who is C. Darnell?" Sebastian's expression darkened. "The family solicitor. My father trusted him with everything." "And you?" "I trust no one," he said quietly. That night, Arabella sat by candlelight, writing in her journal. Lydia was afraid. Someone was watching her. A maid vanished. Father's solicitor received unexplained payments. Her quill trembled. Could he have done it? Could father truly have arranged her death? A knock startled her. Sebastian entered carrying a bottle of brandy and 2 glasses. "You should rest." "I can't. Every answer leads to another question." He poured a drink and handed it to her. "Then let's chase them together." For a long moment they sat in silence. The only sound was the soft crackle of fire. Finally, Sebastian spoke. "Do you hate me?" She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time her anger wavered. "I did, every day, but hate is heavy and I'm tired." He nodded. "So am I." Their eyes met, and the room seemed smaller, the air charged. "Arabella," he whispered. "Don't." But he moved closer anyway, slow, hesitant, as though afraid she'd vanish. His hand brushed hers. She didn't pull away. For one suspended moment, the world held its breath. Then she rose abruptly, breaking the spell. "I should retire." He stood too, regret flickering in his eyes. "Good night, then." As she passed him, her sleeve brushed his, and the contact was enough to make her heart ache all over again. The next morning brought chaos. A servant burst into the breakfast room, pale and breathless. "Your Grace! There's been an incident. The stable caught fire during the night." Sebastian shot to his feet. "Was anyone hurt?" "No, sir, but the records chest is gone. The one with the Duchess's belongings." Arabella's blood ran cold. "Someone's destroying evidence." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Then we're getting close." They spent the day questioning staff, but fear silenced most tongues. Only one young footman, trembling, whispered, "I saw a man by the stables before dawn, riding away toward the moor road." "Did you recognize him?" Arabella asked. He hesitated. "Might have been Mr. Darnell, ma'am, the solicitor." Sebastian cursed under his breath. "I knew it." Arabella gathered her cloak. "Then we go after him." "Arabella, it's dangerous." "So is staying silent," she cut in. "You can ride with me or follow, but I won't stop." He stared at her, then smiled faintly. "You've changed." "No," she said. "I've simply remembered who I am." They rode through the storm, wind whipping their faces, hooves pounding against the earth. The moor stretched before them, wild, endless, unforgiving. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a figure ahead, a man on horseback, struggling through the mud. "Darnell!" Sebastian shouted. The man looked back, eyes wide, and spurred his horse faster. Arabella leaned forward, her voice fierce. "He's heading for the cliffs." They gave chase, the wind tearing at their clothes. Rain lashed their faces. At the edge of the moor, Darnell's horse stumbled. He fell, scrambling to his feet, clutching a satchel. "Stay back," he shouted. "You don't understand." Sebastian dismounted, advancing slowly. "Then make us." Darnell's gaze darted between them. "I did what I was told. Lord Draycott ordered it, all of it. The marriage, the lies, the death?" Arabella's voice was cold steel. Darnell flinched. "She threatened to expose him, said she'd tell the Duke everything. The forged contracts, the blackmail. He couldn't allow it." Sebastian's hand curled into a fist. "And you killed her for him?" Darnell shook his head violently. "I only frightened her. It was supposed to be a warning. She slipped, she fell, I swear." Arabella took a step closer, rain streaming down her face. "And my father paid you to keep silent." "Yes," he whispered. "He said no one would believe the fallen daughter anyway." The words struck her like a blade. "The fallen daughter," she repeated, voice trembling. "He's used every one of us." Lightning flashed again. Darnell tried to run, but Sebastian seized him by the collar. "Enough lies," the Duke said through clenched teeth. "You're coming with us." But before they could move, Darnell twisted free, stumbling toward the cliff edge. "He'll kill me if I talk," he cried. "You don't know him." The ground gave way beneath him. Arabella screamed as he vanished into the fog below. Sebastian caught her arm before she could move closer. "He's gone!" She stared into the abyss, the sound of the wind howling like a requiem. "So is our proof." He looked down at the satchel Darnell had dropped. Not all of it. Inside were letters, documents, contracts bearing Lord Draycott's seal. Arabella took them with trembling hands. "He destroyed Lydia. He destroyed me. I won't let him destroy anyone else." Sebastian's voice was low, steady. "Then we bring him down, together." She looked up at him, rain glistening on her lashes. "Together," she echoed softly. And for the first time she believed it. That night, back at Evermere, she sat before the fire, the satchel open beside her. Every letter was another dagger, proof of her father's schemes, his deceit, his hunger for control. Sebastian entered quietly, his expression unreadable. "We'll go to London, present the evidence before the Crown. He won't escape this time." Arabella nodded, her hands steady at last. "And when it's done?" He hesitated. "Then I'll accept whatever judgment you give me." She turned to him, her voice softer than the fire's crackle. "You still think redemption is yours to ask for?" He looked away. "It's all I have left." Arabella rose, crossing the space between them. "Then earn it," she whispered. "Stand beside me when the truth burns him to ash." Their eyes locked, and for the first time, the distance between them didn't feel impossible. Outside, the storm broke. The air smelled of wet earth and renewal. Arabella pressed her hand to her heart and whispered to the fire, "This time, I will not run from the ruin. I'll use it." And somewhere deep in the house, the echo of Lydia's voice seemed to sigh through the halls, not with grief, but with peace. Arabella woke to the sound of her father's voice, cold, sharp, and far too close. "You shouldn't have come back, my dear." She froze. The fire in the hearth had long died, leaving the room cloaked in shadows. Lord Draycott stood by the window, his silver hair gleaming in the pale dawn. His walking stick tapped once against the floor, deliberate, and slow. "How did you get in?" Her voice was steady, though her pulse thundered. He smiled, that same smile she'd once thought paternal, now nothing but venom. "You forget whose house this once was. There are doors here that open for me alone." Her gaze flicked to the satchel on the table, the one holding the documents that could ruin him. He followed her eyes and chuckled. "Ah, so it's true. You've been digging in graves best left undisturbed." Arabella rose, clutching her robe around her shoulders. "You murdered Lydia." He tilted his head unbothered. "Such an ugly word, child. She was unstable, everyone knew it. You'd do well not to reopen old wounds, especially when your own reputation barely healed." Her hands trembled, rage coiling like fire in her chest. "You lied to me. You lied to all of us." Draycott sighed as though bored. "You were useful once, pretty, obedient, eager to please. But you've forgotten your place, and now you threaten everything I've built." Sebastian's voice cut through the tension from the doorway. "What you built was a kingdom of rot." Draycott turned slowly, the faintest flicker of surprise in his eyes. The prodigal Duke, still clinging to ghosts and guilt? Sebastian stepped into the light. "I have enough ghosts to fill your grave twice over, but I'll sleep soundly, knowing you're in it first." The air crackled between them, predator and predator. Arabella moved toward the satchel, but Draycott's cane struck the floor again, sharp as a gunshot. "Don't," he warned. "You think you can threaten me with papers? You forget how easily a woman's word can be broken." Arabella's eyes met his, and he saw something there he hadn't expected. Not fear, fire. "Then let's see whose word the world believes," she said, voice low and lethal. "The disgraced daughter, or the man whose sins smell like smoke?" Draycott's smile faltered. Just for a moment. By mid-morning, Evermere was in uproar. Servants whispered of raised voices and locked doors. The Duke's carriage stood ready at the front, mud spattered from the moor, as Arabella and Sebastian packed the satchel for London. "You shouldn't have faced him alone," Sebastian said, his hands tight on the straps. "I didn't plan to. He was waiting for me." Sebastian cursed under his breath. "He's desperate, that makes him dangerous." "So am I." He paused, eyes searching hers. "Arabella." "Don't," she said softly. "Don't tell me to be careful. Don't tell me to stand down. Every woman who ever stayed silent gave men like him power. I won't be one of them." He nodded slowly. "Then neither will I." Their carriage rolled out just past noon, wheels grinding over gravel, leaving Evermere behind. That haunted palace of secrets and ruin. London greeted them with its usual deceit, beauty dressed in soot. Fog hung low over the Thames as the carriage rattled through narrow streets. Arabella watched the city blur past, all elegance and grime, just like the families who ruled it. At the townhouse of Lady Worthington, a widow and an ally, they found refuge. The lady herself met them at the door, wrapped in a crimson shawl and curiosity. "My word," she said, eyes gleaming. "You two riding together? The gossip will catch fire by dusk." "Let it burn," Arabella replied. Lady Worthington arched a brow, amused. "Good, then tell me what's worth the scandal." An hour later, the letters and contracts lay spread across her drawing-room table. Wax seals broken, signatures exposed. When Lady Worthington finally looked up, her expression had shifted from curiosity to fury. These implicate half the peerage: blackmail, forged inheritances, false claims to titles. "And Lydia," Arabella said softly, "she discovered it all. My father silenced her before she could expose him." Lady Worthington poured herself a glass of sherry. "If this reaches Parliament, it won't just ruin him. It'll tear through the entire house." "Good," Sebastian said. "Then let it." The widow smiled faintly. "You always were the dangerous kind of noble, Your Grace." That night, as rain whispered against the windows, Arabella found herself unable to sleep. The fire in the guest chamber cast long shadows on the walls, shapes that looked like reaching hands. She poured herself a drink, staring into the flames. "I wonder," she murmured, "if justice ever feels clean." Sebastian's voice came from the doorway. "It rarely does." She turned, startled. He stood there barefoot, shirt loose, the weight of years in his eyes. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not with him still free?" She gestured to the chair across from her. "Then sit. Misery loves company." He sat, the firelight flickering across his face. For a while they said nothing, just the quiet, the storm and the ghosts between them. "Do you ever think," she said finally, "that love and ruin are the same thing, only spoken in different tongues?" He smiled bitterly. "If that's true, then we've both been fluent too long." Her throat tightened. "When I look at you, I see everything I lost, and everything I never stopped wanting." He reached for her hand across the small space. "Then let me give something back." The touch was light, but it set her trembling. Their fingers intertwined, hesitant, unsure. The air grew heavy, not with anger, but with something raw, stripped bare. He leaned forward. "Arabella." But she rose, breaking the spell before it consumed them. "We can't," she whispered. "Not yet. Not while the past still breathes." He nodded, slow and pained. "Then we kill it." The following day was a blur of strategy. Letters were copied, testimonies gathered. Lady Worthington's solicitor prepared sworn statements. But by evening, word had spread. Lord Draycott had arrived in London. "He's at the Ashbourne Club," Lady Worthington said, reading the note her footman brought. "Holding court like nothing ever touched him." Sebastian's jaw clenched. "He's daring us." Arabella slipped on her gloves. "Then let's accept the invitation." The Ashbourne Club was a temple of hypocrisy. Velvet drapes, cigar smoke, men who smiled while sharpening knives behind words. When Arabella entered on Sebastian's arm, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Some whispered her name like a curse, others like an omen. Lord Draycott stood near the fireplace, surrounded by allies. His eyes widened briefly at the sight of her, then hardened into mockery. "Arabella," he drawled, "how gracious of you to bring your scandal to my doorstep." She met his gaze, unflinching. "I've only brought the truth." He laughed, slow and deliberate. "Truth? My dear, society believes the version I pay for." "Then let's test that." She drew a folded parchment from her reticule and laid it on the nearest table. The room's hum quieted. "This is your confession, signed by your solicitor before his unfortunate death. It details every bribe, every forgery, every secret you buried under your title." The color drained from his face. "You bluff." "Am I?" Sebastian tossed another document beside hers. "This one bears your seal. Payment to silence witnesses after the Duchess's fall." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Draycott's mask slipped. "You would destroy your own name, your own bloodline?" Arabella's voice was ice. "I already buried one sister because of it. I can bury a legacy just the same." He lunged toward her, fury twisting his face, but Sebastian intercepted him, shoving him back hard. "Touch her," he warned, "and I swear I'll finish what the gallows will start." Chaos erupted. Men shouted. Others restrained Draycott as he raged. The club manager called for the constable. Amid the uproar, Arabella stood unmoved. The fallen daughter turned executioner. When it was done, when Draycott was dragged away shouting her name, she finally let herself breathe. Days later, the trial began. London devoured every detail. The forged estates, the missing funds, the silenced witnesses. Lydia's death was reclassified as homicide. And through it all, Arabella sat in the front row, unblinking, while her father refused to meet her eyes. When the verdict was read, guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and murder, A hush fell over the court. Draycott rose slowly, his once commanding voice reduced to a rasp. "You've damned us all, Arabella." She met his stare, calm and unflinching. "No, father, you damned yourself." The gavel struck, justice, ugly and complete. That night, she stood on Westminster Bridge, the cold air sharp in her lungs. The river below shimmered like liquid night. Sebastian joined her quietly, his coat brushing hers. "It's done," she nodded. "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because justice doesn't heal. It just stops the bleeding." They stood in silence. The wind tugged at her hair. Somewhere, a church bell tolled midnight. "Where will you go now?" he asked. "Home," she said softly, "though I'm not sure I know where that is anymore." He looked at her then, really looked, and there was no pity, only reverence. "Wherever you are, that's where I'll be." She smiled faintly. "You still love me?" "Always." For a long moment neither spoke. Then she stepped closer, her hand finding his. "No more ghosts," she whispered. He drew her against him, and the kiss that followed was not desperate or rushed, but steady, certain, the kind that builds rather than burns. When they parted, the city lights shimmered around them like fallen stars. "Evermere," she said after a while, "I think I'll rebuild it. Not as a house of sorrow, but as a sanctuary." He smiled. "Then you'll need someone to help. Only if you promise not to haunt me again." "No promises," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She laughed, soft, free, unburdened. For the first time in years, Arabella felt the weight lift from her chest. Not all of it. Some ghosts never leave entirely, but enough to breathe, enough to begin again. And as dawn bled over the horizon, painting the river gold, she whispered into the light, "Lydia, rest now. The reckoning is over." The wind answered with silence and peace. Arabella jolted awake to the sound of shattering glass. Her hand flew to the knife beneath her pillow, old habits born of betrayal. Moonlight spilled across the floor of Evermere's east wing, where shadows moved like phantoms. The mansion, newly restored but still haunted by its past, groaned under the weight of midnight wind. She rose from the bed, heart pounding. "Sebastian?" she called softly. No answer, only the echo of footsteps below, hurried and heavy. Arabella snatched her robe and slipped into the corridor. The house smelled faintly of smoke. Her son's room was just down the hall. The thought made her blood run cold. She ran. At the foot of the stairs, she stopped dead. A figure in a black cloak stood by the open door, a torch burning low beside him. The faint orange light caught the edge of a familiar ring, the Draycott crest, her father's ring. "Impossible," she breathed. The man turned, and though his face was hidden beneath the hood, she saw it, the impossible truth, the scar beneath his eye, the shape of his mouth. "Hello, Arabella," he said, voice hoarse but unmistakable. "Did you miss me?" Her world fractured in an instant. "You're supposed to be dead." Draycott smiled, a grotesque parody of life. "And yet here I stand. They hanged a man in my place, a bribed soul with debts enough to die for me. London loves a spectacle more than justice." Her breath caught. "You let the world think that you were avenged?" "Of course, it made you easy to watch, easier to wound when the time came." He took a slow step toward her. "You took my fortune, my name, my legacy. Now I'll take what you love most." The creak of a floorboard, and Sebastian appeared from behind the staircase, pistol drawn. "You'll take nothing." Draycott's eyes gleamed with madness. "Ah, the Duke, ever her savior. Tell me, how does it feel to love the daughter of your ruin?" Sebastian fired. The bullet grazed Draycott's shoulder, but the old man only laughed, a sound that didn't belong to the living. "You think I fear death now?" The torch fell, flames licking the drapes. Within seconds, the house roared with fire. "Arabella!" Sebastian shouted. "Get the boy!" She turned and ran, her son's cries echoing from the upper hall. The smoke thickened fast. She burst into his room, grabbed him from the bed, and wrapped him in a blanket. His tiny fingers clutched her gown. "Mama? Hold on to me, darling." Flames chased her down the corridor. The house, their second chance, was collapsing around them. She reached the staircase, where Sebastian fought to drag Draycott toward the door. "Go!" he shouted. "No, not without you!" Draycott swung his cane, catching Sebastian across the face. "You'll die with me, boy, just like she should have." Arabella lunged forward, clutching a fallen candelabra. She struck, once, twice, the hollow sound of metal on bone. Draycott fell backward, crashing into the flames that swallowed the hall. His scream tore through the inferno, echoing through Evermere's grand dying walls. Sebastian grabbed Arabella's arm, pulling her and the boy through the smoke and out into the rain. The mansion burned behind them, a cathedral of fire and memory. Arabella sank to her knees, her child pressed to her chest. Rain and ash mingled on her face. Sebastian fell beside her, bleeding but alive. "It's over," he rasped. She shook her head, eyes wide on the flames. No, not yet. By morning, Evermere was nothing but a skeleton of blackened stone. The constables found no body among the ruins. Only a single silver ring, scorched, but unmistakable. Arabella stared at it in silence. "Perhaps that's mercy," Sebastian said. "Mercy," she repeated, voice hollow. "He's escaped twice, once from the noose, once from fire. Tell me, what mercy lives in that?" Sebastian touched her hand gently. "The kind that lets us live without chasing ghosts." She looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were weary, his face lined by sleepless nights and loss. "You should hate me," he said quietly. "I started this war." Arabella's lips parted. "You think I don't?" He flinched. She softened. "But hate isn't what survives, not after everything." She turned to her son, still sleeping in her arms. "This is what survives." 2 months later, London buzzed with whispers. The Draycott affair, they called it. The scandal that refused to die. Arabella had inherited what remained of her family's estate, though she wore the title with unease. Society had changed its tune. The fallen daughter had become a tragic heroine, a symbol of justice and resilience. But she did not attend balls or answer letters. Her world had narrowed to a small townhouse overlooking the Thames, a place where peace felt like exile. Every night she wrote in her journal, letters to Lydia, confessions to the void. "He's gone, but I still hear him. Every creak of the door, every shadow that moves too slow. Maybe ghosts don't haunt places. Maybe they haunt guilt." A knock came one night as the clock struck 10. Sebastian stood at her door, drenched from rain, his eyes a storm. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know," he replied, "but I couldn't stay away." She let him in. The firelight painted him in amber, his every movement quieter than before. "There's talk," he said, "about Draycott. A sailor claims to have seen a man matching his description in Dover." Her blood turned cold. "You think he's alive?" "I think evil doesn't drown easily." She turned toward the window, watching rain streak down the glass. "Then he'll come for us again." Sebastian crossed the room, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Let him. This time we're ready." She turned, her eyes meeting his. "I'm tired, Sebastian. Tired of fighting, of running, of surviving a world that feeds on my pain." He brushed a wet curl from her cheek. "Then stop surviving. Start living. With me." Her breath caught. "You'd still have me? After all this?" He smiled faintly. "I never stopped." For a moment the air between them softened. Fragile, human, warm. Then she leaned in, their lips meeting like the first sunrise after endless storm. Weeks passed. They settled quietly by the coast, far from London's gossip. The sea became their solace, endless, untamed, forgiving. Arabella found herself writing again, though not letters of mourning, stories. Tales of women who refused to be erased, of men who learned to love without power. Her publisher, intrigued, asked for more. "Anonymous," she said. "Let the words speak, not the name." Sebastian worked the land, his hands rough with honest labor. Their son, Thomas, grew with his mother's fire and his father's stubborn will, but peace is a fragile thing. One evening, as they walked the cliffs, Arabella spotted a lone figure near the edge, tall, gaunt, unmoving. "Sebastian," she whispered, gripping his arm. The figure turned, the wind catching his coat. Even from a distance, the profile was unmistakable. Draycott, alive. Her pulse thundered. "He's here." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Go back to the cottage. Lock the doors." "No." She stepped forward. "Not again, not this time." The path was slick with rain as they approached. Draycott turned fully, face pale and ravaged, eyes burning with something unholy. "So this is what my legacy has come to," he sneered. A duke and his whore playing at redemption. Sebastian lunged, but Arabella caught his arm. "No," she said. "He wants that. He wants blood." She faced her father, voice steady despite the storm. "You've already taken everything from me. You can't take what I no longer owe you." Draycott's lips twisted. "Then I'll take your peace." He stepped closer, slipping on the wet stone. The cliff crumbled beneath his feet. For a single heartbeat, time froze. His eyes met hers, filled not with rage, but fear. Then he fell. The sea swallowed him without sound. Arabella stood motionless, rain mingling with tears. Sebastian drew her close, arms wrapping around her trembling form. "It's over," he whispered. This time she believed him. Days later, she stood on that same cliff, the horizon stretching wide and golden. The wind carried salt and freedom. In her hands, she held the last page of her new manuscript, the Duke's unforgiven vow. She read aloud softly, "Love does not always heal. Sometimes it exposes the wound so the truth can finally breathe, and when it does, even sorrow finds its peace." She let the page go. The wind caught it, lifting it toward the sea. Behind her, Sebastian called, "Are you coming home?" She turned, smiling, truly smiling. Yes, finally. He took her hand as they walked back toward the cottage, the child's laughter echoing in the distance. And for the first time since that cursed wedding morning, Arabella Draycott felt something she thought she'd buried forever. Not forgiveness, not triumph. Freedom. They said her name like a curse that night. Lady Arabella Draycott. The music stopped. The ballroom stilled. And every gaze, every glittering, venom-laced eye, turned to her. She stood in the doorway of the Duke of Ashbourne's winter masquerade, framed by chandeliers, blazing like fire above her head. The gown she wore was the color of spilled wine and vengeance, crimson silk clinging like sin, diamonds glinting across her throat. Months ago, they had whispered she would never show her face again. Yet here she was, walking into the lion's den with the grace of a queen and the calm of a woman who had already died once. Sebastian's glass shattered in his hand. He hadn't seen her since the wedding, the day his name became synonymous with cruelty. The crowd parted for her, murmuring behind jeweled fans. She smiled faintly, as if amused by their horror, and stepped into the light. "Good evening, Your Grace," she said, her voice steady, velvet-edged. "I trust the years have been kind." It was not a question. It was a blade, thin and polite. Sebastian's throat worked as though swallowing shards. "Arabella." Her name left him like prayer and punishment both. "How unexpected," he said finally, but his voice betrayed the tremor beneath the mask of a duke. "Oh, I think you expected me," she said. Men like you always do. You just never believe the woman will actually rise. Laughter rippled somewhere, nervous, brittle, like glass breaking underfoot. The orchestra hesitated, then began again, softer this time, violins threading through tension. She moved past him, trailing the scent of roses and quiet ruin, her gown whispering secrets against the marble floor. He turned to follow her, but she was already surrounded. Lord Pembroke, the one who had called her damaged goods, bowed low, stammering some empty compliment. Arabella smiled sweetly, lifting a single brow. "My lord," she said, "I do hope your memory is better than your manners." Gasps, silence, then delight. The Tun loved blood, after all. Later, under the glow of candlelight and gossip, she found herself standing beside the great mirror of Ashbourne Hall, her reflection haloed in gold. Behind her, whispers swelled like waves, every noble mouth tasting her scandal anew. "I thought exile suited her." "She looks stronger, doesn't she?" "She looks dangerous." She lifted her chin. "Good, let them think so." Her hand found the fan at her wrist, opening it slowly, a deliberate act, like unsheathing a sword. Across the room, Sebastian watched her, his expression unreadable, but his knuckles whitened on his glass whenever another man leaned too close. And he hated that. He had chosen his guilt. She had chosen her power. When he finally crossed the ballroom toward her, the room hushed again. She didn't move, not when he stopped beside her, not when his breath stirred the curls near her temple. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. Arabella smiled, eyes meeting his in the mirror. "And yet, you can't seem to look anywhere else." The dance began. He offered his hand, hesitant, haunted. She let him sweat for a heartbeat before taking it. The waltz swept them into motion, the crowd circling like vultures around a storm. "You've changed," he said under the music. "Did you expect me not to?" He searched her face, those eyes that had once worshipped him now glinting with an elegance that frightened him. "I thought I was protecting you." She laughed. It was quiet, terrible, beautiful. "By destroying me publicly? How very noble." "I was forced. Don't lie, Sebastian. You wanted the easier path, and you chose her." The music rose and she spun away from him, red silk slicing through the air. For a heartbeat, he saw her not as the woman he'd betrayed, but as something celestial and untouchable. When the song ended, she curtsied, the faintest mockery of old affection in her eyes. "Thank you, Your Grace," she said, "for reminding me how little mercy I owe you." Then she left him standing amid the applause of the very crowd that had once pitied her. Outside, snow drifted over the courtyard, catching in her hair like stardust. The night air was cold and sharp, carrying whispers of her name. A figure emerged from the shadows. Lord Callum Wade, Ashbourne's oldest friend and one of society's cruelest tongues. "Lady Arabella," he drawled, "you've returned from ruin looking rather splendid." "Careful, my lord," she said, stepping closer. "Flattery sounds much like regret when it comes from you." He smirked. "I heard you intend to purchase the old estate near Brighton. With what fortune, I wonder?" "With mine," she replied, eyes narrowing. "And if you must know, I've made investments in trade, something most lords seem incapable of doing without inheritance." He stiffened. The crowd loved it. Her words would spread like wildfire by morning. Let them. Every rumor was torch she would use to burn the past. Later that night, in her private carriage, Arabella sat in silence, watching the snow blur past. Her maid, Lydia's old maid, now hers by design, spoke softly. "My lady, you truly mean to attend every event this season?" "Yes, they will talk. They already do." Her reflection in the window was calm, but inside, her heart beat with something between defiance and grief. Power was not peace, but it was armor. and she needed it. When the carriage stopped before her townhouse, she turned to her maid. "Send a note to the editor of the Society Gazette. I believe they'll enjoy tomorrow's headline." The maid blinked. "What shall I write, my lady?" Arabella smiled, slow and wicked. "Write, Lady Arabella Draycott returns to London, and society is not ready." By morning, London trembled. Every paper carried her name. The Ton devoured the story like honeyed poison, how the forsaken bride had risen richer, wiser, more beautiful than ever. At noon, invitations flooded her door. By nightfall, every drawing room whispered the same thing. "She's untouchable now." But Sebastian knew better. He watched from his study as the latest paper landed on his desk, her portrait staring up at him in delicate ink lines. "She's winning," he muttered. "God help me, she's winning." Behind him, his mother's voice was cold. "Perhaps you should have thought of that before you humiliated her." He turned sharply. "You know why I did it." "No," the Duchess said. "You know why you told yourself you did it, but that girl loved you beyond reason, and you traded her heart for the illusion of duty." Sebastian's jaw clenched. "She's not the same woman." "Good," his mother said softly. "Perhaps now you'll finally meet your equal." Weeks passed. Each night a new event. Each night Arabella's name glittered higher in the social firmament. But power has its price. In quiet moments, when laughter faded and the fire dimmed, she would remember his voice, the way it broke when he said, "Forgive me." The echo of vows never spoken still haunted her dreams. And yet, she never allowed tears. Not anymore. The turning point came during Lady Montgomery's masquerade, a mirror of the one she had first attended. Arabella wore black this time, jeweled with onyx and silver. When she entered, even the chandeliers seemed to dim. Sebastian was already there, unmasked, waiting. "Brave of you to come," he said. "Brave of you to stay," she countered. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "Every night you appear in a new gown, every paper sings your praises, but to what end?" "To remind the world," she said, stepping closer, "that a woman's ruin is not her end. It is her beginning." His breath hitched. "And me?" She studied him. You're the lesson." He flinched. "Arabella." "Don't," she whispered. "You don't get to say my name as if it still belongs to you." But he caught her wrist before she could turn away. The world seemed to shrink around them. "I never stopped." "Loving me?" she cut in. "Don't insult us both." For a heartbeat. They stood suspended in silence, his grip softening, her pulse betraying her calm. Then she drew her hand free, leaving his fingers empty and cold. "I warned you once, Sebastian," she said. "I am not the woman you left at that altar. The next time you reach for me, make sure you're ready to bleed." That night, she returned home and opened her journal, the same one she had written in before her wedding. Her pen hovered. "I have become everything they feared I would be," she wrote. "Unforgiven, unyielding, unbroken." Then beneath it, she added, "But why does vengeance still ache like love?" Outside, church bells tolled the midnight hour. In another part of the city, Sebastian stood at his window, listening to the same bells, whispering the same thought. And thus began the second act of their ruin, where vengeance would collide with desire, and love would crawl back through the ashes, begging to be reborn. Her hand struck him, before she even realized she'd moved. The sound cracked through the room like gunfire, sharp, final, merciless. Sebastian didn't flinch. He only stood there, eyes glistening in the half-light of the study, cheek flaming red where her palm had landed. "How dare you?" Arabella hissed, voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "You come here, into my house, and speak of love as if the word still fits in your mouth." The door behind her swung shut with a soft click. The storm outside pounded against the windows, rain smearing the night like ink. "I had to see you," he said hoarsely. You're in danger. She laughed, a low, hollow sound that curdled his blood. You always said that when you wanted to control me. This isn't control, Arabella. It's survival. She turned her back on him, moving toward the fire. Her gown, a dark emerald trimmed in black, caught the light like living flame. Survival, she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. You speak of survival to a woman you left for dead. I made a mistake. She spun on him. A mistake? Her voice cracked. You humiliated me before all of London, Sebastian. You broke every vow you made, every promise you ever whispered. A mistake is forgetting a name, not destroying a life. His jaw clenched. Do you truly think I wanted that? Yes, she cut in. Because wanting something was never your problem. Courage was. The silence that followed was unbearable. Only the fire dared to move, hissing and snapping between them. Finally, he stepped forward. Listen to me, he said. Your father, he's been moving funds, selling Draycott lands under false titles. There's talk he's tied to Lydia's death. Her breath caught. You're lying. Am I? He drew a folded letter from his coat and tossed it into the flames. The wax seal melted instantly. Her father's crest, unmistakable. That came from a solicitor in Dover, a confession in all but name. If it becomes public, he'll hang. Arabella stared at the fire, her pulse roaring in her ears. He killed Lydia, Sebastian said quietly, to protect himself, and now someone else is trying to silence anyone who knows. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Why tell me? Because I don't want you to be next. The fury in her eyes faltered, for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, before she turned away again. You think that erases what you did? No, he said softly. Nothing could, but maybe it's not too late to stop him. She pressed a hand to her temple, fighting the dizzying storm inside. Her father, Lydia, the lies that had poisoned everything. Finally, she looked back at him. Then we find proof. He blinked. You'll help me? Her mouth curved into something cold and dangerous. Oh, Sebastian, don't mistake alliance for forgiveness. By dawn, they were on the road to Evermere Hall. Fog rolled low across the fields, swallowing the horizon. The carriage rattled through the morning mist, neither of them speaking. He watched her in silence, the way she sat upright, chin lifted, hands folded neatly in her lap as though defying the chill. You haven't asked why I came back, he said at last. I don't care. You should. Her eyes met his. I should have done many things differently. Loving you tops the list. He exhaled, jaw tightening. You're cruel when you're hurt. She smiled faintly. And you're weak when you're guilty. How poetic. The wheels hit a rut. The jolt broke the moment. Ahead, Evermere loomed through the fog. Dark, colossal, its windows black like the hollow eyes of the past. Inside, the house smelled of dust and ghosts. Arabella's breath caught at the sight of the grand staircase, the same one Lydia had fallen from. The banister gleamed faintly, polished as if to erase the memory of blood. But memory clings. She stepped closer, fingertips brushing the wood. The image rose unbidden, Lydia's laughter echoing through the hall, her silk slippers gliding over marble, the sudden scream, then silence. Sebastian's voice broke through the reverie. The servants' quarters are empty. The estate's been closed for months. She turned. Then where's your steward? Dead. Found in the stables a fortnight ago. They called it an accident. She stiffened. And you believe that? He met her gaze. I don't believe in accidents anymore. They ascended the stairs together, the silence between them sharp as glass. At the landing, she paused. Which room was hers? He hesitated. East wing, third door. I'll need to see it. Arabella, I said, she repeated, voice trembling but sure. I'll see it. The room was untouched. Sunlight slanted across the floorboards, dust motes drifting like ghosts in the beam. Lydia's dressing table sat neatly arranged. Hairbrush, perfume, an open book left mid-sentence. Arabella's throat tightened. She was happy here? She tried to be. Arabella moved to the table. Beneath the mirror, something glimmered. An ivory comb engraved with the Draycott crest. My father's gift, she murmured. Sebastian frowned. Look closer. She turned it over. The crest had been filed down. Her pulse stuttered. Why would she? A sound cut her off. A floorboard groaned. Sebastian's hand went to the pistol at his side. Stay behind me. He crossed the room, kicked open the wardrobe door, empty. Then, from the adjoining chamber, came a low voice. Looking for ghosts, Your Grace? A man stepped into view, tall, cloaked in gray. Arabella froze. Who are you? Sebastian demanded. The man smiled thinly. The one sent to clean up your family's mess. He moved like a shadow, quick, efficient. Steel flashed. Sebastian blocked the blade with his pistol, the impact ringing through the air. Run! He shouted. Arabella hesitated, then grabbed the nearest object, the heavy glass perfume bottle, and hurled it. It struck the man's shoulder, shattering. Sebastian fired once. The intruder stumbled, then vanished through the side door. The echo of the shot hung in the room, thick with smoke and the scent of powder. Arabella stood trembling, palms slick with sweat. What was that? Sebastian reloaded with shaking hands. Proof someone doesn't want us finding the truth. Her voice steadied. Then we're closer than they want us to be. Night fell heavy over Evermere. They lit only one candle in the study, both too alert for sleep. The papers they'd found, old ledgers, sealed letters, lay spread across the desk like evidence of sin. Arabella traced one line of ink with her fingertip. He sold everything, she whispered. Even the land's mother brought as dowry. Sebastian nodded grimly. And the buyer? M.W. No full name, repeated on every contract. He frowned. I know that Mark. Marcus Wade, Callum's brother. Her heart clenched. The same Callum who hosted the masquerade? The same. She sank into the chair, disbelief flickering across her face. So this, all of it, leads back to him? Sebastian poured 2 glasses of brandy. It leads back to your father's desperation, and anyone he used to hide it. She stared into the fire. Then I'll use it to destroy him. He looked at her over the rim of his glass. You mean your father? Her tone was ice. I mean every man who thought my silence was weakness. Later, when the candles burned low and exhaustion blurred the edges of thought, she stood at the window, watching the moon drown in fog. Sebastian came up behind her. You should rest. I can't, he hesitated. You're trembling. She turned, meeting his eyes. Don't mistake that for fear. I never do, he said softly. Something in his voice cracked through her armor. For a moment, the air between them shifted, grief folding into desire, anger into longing. He reached for her hand. She didn't stop him. Arabella, he whispered, I see you now. Truly, I see what I ruined. Tears glimmered in her eyes, but her voice remained steel. Then remember it, because forgiveness is not what you'll find. Still, when he leaned closer, she didn't move away. Their lips met like fire and war, hungry, furious, unstoppable. And when she finally pulled back, breathless and shaking, she whispered, This changes nothing. I know. Good. But they both knew she lied. The next morning, the sound of hoofbeats shattered the quiet. A messenger, pale and trembling, thrust a letter into Arabella's hands. The seal was her father's. She tore it open. Arabella, it read, You have no idea the danger you've stirred. If you value your life, stay away from Evermere. You think you're hunting ghosts, but it is you they are coming for. Beneath the words, a drop of dried blood marked the parchment. She looked up, eyes blazing. It's begun. Sebastian took the letter. Then we end it. She drew a breath steady and fierce. For Lydia. For all of it, he said, and together they turned toward the door, two haunted souls bound not by love or vengeance anymore, but by the truth that one could no longer live without the other. Outside, thunder rolled over Evermere, promising the reckoning yet to come.